Hello. Be grateful that you don't have to see my eye bags. Okay, so we're going to do something a little bit different. I was going to do this absolutely ages ago and was really worried about camera angles, but I'm managing to hang my phone. Sorry, I need to start taking photographs of how I'm placing what I'm using as a tripod for my camera. Sorry. I just find this whole thing really amusing. Okay, so I was meant to be seeing my little boy today, and he's really poorly. So I am working like an absolute mofo. I'm going to be using every second to work. So I'm going to do a few videos today, hopefully. But this is a cool one, and it might make some of the things that I say make sense. Well, I'm hoping it will do. Right, enough with the waffling. I hope that you've seen Back to the Future 2. Because this will completely make sense. So in Back to the Future 2, Biff, the baddie in the film, manages to get his hands on a sports almanac and takes it back in time, in the time machine, and gives it to himself. And Marty and the Doc also, well, they go forward in time to what they think is the 1980s of the year that they came from, and end up getting dropped into a completely different 1980, what is it, 1983, is it? 1985, I want to say. Because Biff going back in time and giving himself this sports almanac, so he's become a millionaire. So with that in mind, pay attention, because I might go a little bit fast and there's a lot to take in. But so this is sort of going to explain what I mean when I say timeline jumping and how quickly you can do it. So, like, if you can imagine that this is your timeline from, your birth to your death. Like, say you're somewhere in the middle here. This is you. Let's just say 2022. And you're saying, right, okay, I want to change my future. So you can think about things that have happened in your past, things that you want to learn from. So say, for example, you had a really bad, addiction to food. I don't know, in the year 2000, over lockdown. No, 2020, should I say. And you can say food addiction, or you can have, a bit of an eating disorder, or a problem with eating that you want to go back and address. Like, you feel like you've moved through it a little bit, or you might still be suffering from it, but it was worse in 2020. Then you can say here, this was like lockdown, where it got really bad, and you can say that you had a really bad relationship in 2019 that ended really badly with an abusive partner. Abuse. You can say, you came out of another relationship that was pretty abusive and ended pretty badly. So you can document, you can do this yourself. Go for a bit of a timeline and write significant things down. I'll use me as an example. Leaving university, without finishing, 2004. And I can say that I pretty much hated school. School life was pretty crappy, especially in my teens. So what we can do if we want to jump timelines is say we'll go back to the present day, which is here. If we want to jump timelines, we have to go and give ourselves the almanac. And basically, the sports almanac for us is choices. Okay, so you can jump timelines with choosing better for yourself. Okay, so like if you went, I don't know, to 2019, so we go back in time, we have a look at how that relationship went, the red flags we didn't see, we take accountability. You can see past videos for this kind of stuff, and we can transmute that energy to something really positive. So at the time you came out of that relationship feeling like it was the end of the world, that you were the worst person in the world, that you did everything wrong, how could you make this mistake, this person took everything from you, you know, like this really low energy feelings towards it. But if we go back in time and address the situation from a different standpoint, i.e. what did you learn from it, what did you take from it, could you have done anything better, taking accountability for your actions, you're basically building a better choice for yourself. So what you do is you jump a timeline. So you build another timeline from 2019, when you had this terrible abusive relationship. You fork off and you transmute the energy from this given point, because that's all time is. Let's just get that into perspective. The reason why psychics can read energy and people can see things into the future and into the past is because all time exists at once. It's energy. Time is energy. It's nothing more than that. Humans have put numbers to time and all this kind of stuff, and we've made it into something how can I say it, more understandable. But basically everything is happening at the same time. So if you pull up the thoughts, you know, if you pull up the file in your brain, you pull up that memory bank to that time in your life, and you go back and you can see the lessons learned, the mistakes made. You know, I could have acted like this, I could have said this would have happened, I should have left at this point, you know, taking that person's opinion wasn't the best, I should have used my intuition, I knew. All these kind of things changes the energy around this time, and therefore you start a new timeline. So all you're doing is taking a choice to make a different decision, and that's how you jump a timeline, literally. So this is the timeline if you carried on making the same decisions, on the same thoughts, the same expectations, the same opinions, you carry on down this trajectory of time. If you make different decisions and different choices and say to yourself, right, I've learnt from that, when this person shows me this kind of behaviour, I am going to make this choice A, let's say, then you go into timeline A. So in other words, when you build a boundary, for example, when a person speaks to me in this kind of way, when this person shows me this kind of red flag, I will act accordingly and therefore push me into a different timeline. Because this is how people repeat cycles. They stay on the same timeline, the original timeline. And you hear people saying, I get the same person over and over again. I keep getting these repeating patterns of relationships, because you're staying on the same timeline. And the universe will keep giving you the same energy over and over and over and over again. So let's go for another one. So if you went back even further and said, So some of the relationships that I chose at school were more for basically if they if I fit in with the right people, then they wouldn't see that I wasn't for them, if that makes sense. I had no idea how to pick friends when I was at school. The friends that I felt drawn to, I stayed away from. It just completely kooky, and it's only in sort of later life where I've actually sort of doubled back and got in touch with friends that I should have been friends with at school. So yeah, you can take the timeline back. So from this timeline, so you're on timeline A, let's say. Yeah, and this is the original. Yeah, so you can go back even more. So we're going back from the present day, and we're going back to let's say university, when we started having problems with money, when we started having problems with chemical addictions and things like that. So if you go back and start doing the work and say, right, what hole was I filling at that time? Why was I leaning on an addiction? What was the crutch? What was I getting from that addiction? And you can say there was, for example, there was a lot of social nuances around like university. I wasn't being supported. There was a lot expected of me. Newfound freedom, and you can start addressing the behaviours around that time, and this is called the work. And therefore, if these situations arise in your life, like, for example, let's say, if someone asks you to go out on a drinking weekend and you say, no, that's not for me anymore, then you're jumping a further timeline, because you're not getting caught up in a social expectation. You're making another different choice for yourself. So therefore, you make another timeline, and it comes even further, and you're getting even further away from yourself, from the original timeline. So this is now B. So the further that you go back, I'm not going to bore you too much with too many different timelines, but the idea is the further that you go back, the further you get away from the original timeline, because you're doing more work. And if you can go really far back, so before you were even on the planet, your energy was already here. And when I say that, I mean the energy that is transmuted from your parents. So if your parents were abused, or if your parents went through poverty, if your parents went through trauma, if your parents had things happen to them that they didn't deal with, then their energy is put onto you. It's in your DNA. It travels through their behaviours to you. It travels through your brothers and sisters to you. It's the energy in your home, the energy that they give you, the words that they say, the expectations. All this energy is transmuted from your parents to you. So if you can start understanding who your parents are and why your parents are the way they are, then you're doing even more work for yourself, and you're actually transmuting even more energy that's inside you, that has been brought to you through your parents, so you can jump more timelines. So if you can go, I'll just go back onto the other page. So if you went even further back, over here, your timeline will come out so far away from you that you are pretty much unrecognizable to your original self. Yeah? I hope this is making sense, because it makes complete sense to me. And then obviously, if you can do research into your ancestry, like when I started learning about my granddad, and it was actually just before my mum died that I started doing loads of research into my granddad dying, and what he went through, and learning about it, and even crying over some of the things, the information that I found, and talking about it with others and contacting other people that would have been around my granddad, and thinking about how he would have felt, and sort of almost like transmuting some of his hurt and some of his energy through me actually healed me, and well, healed him and healed me, healed the part of me that was attached to his energy, and gave me greater understanding of who I am, and therefore not making the same repeating patterns that were in my bloodline before I even came onto the planet. You know, the same patterns that were in my mum, the same patterns that I can see in the rest of my family. Like it's all there if you go and look for it, and you're willing to be accountable, and you're willing to research and be curious about where you actually come from. Because the way that we understand genetics and the way that we understand how we came into the world is energy has a big part to play in that, and DNA is basically stamped with energy, and it's energy that comes through our genetics, and their understanding how much trauma and causes disease within hereditary bloodlines. So if someone, for example, if someone has an addiction to sugar and sweet things, you know, they might have lived in poverty and they see these things as treats. If they've got to the point where they're overdosing on sugar, this actually becomes disease within the body through sugar regulation. And God, I can't think of the problem with your blood. Mine's just gone blank. When your glucose levels don't sit right, it can make you go blind. Oh my God. What is it? You know what I mean though, don't you? And obviously that becomes a hereditary problem, you know, that it's punctured into your DNA and is passed down through your children. God, I still can't think of it. That's really going to bug me. I do apologise. You know what I mean. And other diseases as well. So like immune disorders and asthma can be hereditary. Basically, it's unhealed trauma within that person that causes them to become dependent on substances. And you know, like if someone's an alcoholic, that repeating pattern will be passed down through their children, not just through their genetics, but also through their behaviours and through the energy that they transmute to their children. This is why it's really important to heal yourself before you have children, because that's another post. But yeah, so if the further back that you can go in time, the further you can get away from your original timeline. So if you're really struggling with your present day and you're worried about what your future is going to look like, the best thing to do is to start creeping back through your own timeline and see what things that you can change and what lessons that you can learn from, and what energy you can alchemize from a negative into a positive, so that you can make better choices in the future. So every time that I say so much in my work about the power of choice, because literally within a choice you have you know, the good choice and the bad choice, the old you and the good you, the old you and the new you. You know, what would old Gemma do? What would the new Gemma do? And in that choice is power. That's, to me, that's basically what a healing journey looks like. You don't really have to think about too far in the future. You just have to think about the present and think about that choice now. So once you've been all the way back through your timeline and you've seen the mistakes and you can take accountability and learn from situations and understand why you made them decisions and what made you act that way, then you know, flowing through that energy and actually accepting it and grieving and processing that energy properly and then letting it go turns that memory or turns that negative puncture in your DNA into something else. It's not there anymore, so that you can jump onto a different timeline. I hope that makes sense. Like I've said in previous posts that I don't feel like I'm Gemma Gaines anymore. Like that name doesn't, it's not me, it's not who I am. I'm not that person anymore. And it's because I've done so much work going all the way back and really taking every single thing that has ever come into my life or ever happened to me and really sat with it and done all the work, that my timeline has jumped so far away from this original timeline that this doesn't feel like me anymore, because I'm over here. Still in the same body. Well, I don't even feel like I'm in the same body anymore. It would be really hard for me to try and fit this all in one video, especially the way that I waffle. But also, just to finish off, when you are jumping timelines, you can feel really, I mean, if you see the space between here, if you're jumping from here all the way over here, you sort of have to move through the emptiness. And this is where it can feel really strange and you feel unsettled and you feel like, fuck, have I made the right decision? Am I doing the right thing? Because it's like you're not aligning with anything. You're just swimming about in space until you hit this new timeline and you have to stick to it. So like the timeline, you will sit in alignment. You've probably heard me say that. When you're in alignment and you're sticking to that way of life and you're making the good choices for yourself, then you start, it's like the steam train on the track. You can't move it off because the universe is giving you the energy that you are asking for, if that makes sense, and it's aligned, so you can move through this timeline. If you choose to make even better choices and do even more work, then you jump more timelines. But basically this is sort of what I mean by jumping timelines and doing the work. I hope that helps. I know this video is long. I'm sorry I waffled, but again, at least you don't have to see my eye bags.